I have to say, I really feel for Little Miss Fickle, particularly at the end of the book. Little Miss Fickle is a fickle individual, or at least she has a fickle personality. We learn that she has a lot of difficulty choosing. And in a way, I don't necessarily agree with the term fickle because I am a person who has a lot of difficulty with making decisions. There are people like myself who get exceptionally anxious, and it's actually a bit of a bad mental health problem. But this is not necessarily poking fun at people with mental health problems, but it's just something to bear in mind that a lot of young children may struggle with making decisions, and it is just a fickle personality where they just don't know how to make up their own mind. But it's important to bear in mind that for some young children reading this, or to whom it is being read, it can be more than that. It might actually be I was going to say a symptom of a more serious mental health condition, but it could also be just a sign of anxiety. So it's something to bear in mind if you're reading this with a young child, or if a young child is indeed reading it themselves and finding that they can feel for Miss Fickle, and there's an element of relatability. It may be something more serious, but maybe not. And she has a lot of difficulty making decisions. She goes into a restaurant and she just goes back and forth with the menu. She goes to buy a hat and keeps changing her mind about what hat she wants. Definitely a good example of the classic fickle personality. She goes to the butcher's, and ultimately, and this is the element of relatability that I love, she goes to the library where there are 19,999 books. And honestly, all seriousness aside, while I do relate to this sheer anxiety over making decisions, I know exactly what that feels like, as I'm sure many, many readers do when you just go into the library and you don't have any specific expectations for what you want. And because there is so much choice, it can actually be really difficult to choose a book. And I completely loved that ending. I thought that was a brilliant thing, a brilliant situation to put her in because it's so relatable. Children's books, there are obviously not as many as there are in the general fiction section, but definitely I understand how she felt. And it turns out that she'd read it before, which again is not that uncommon. So I really like the character. I really like the narrative. I think it's relatable for young children and older readers. But I do think it's worth bearing in mind that some people may just be fickle and they may just not be able to make up their minds. But in some cases, it can be a sign of something else. And that's definitely worth bearing in mind, especially with young children. I don't know how common that is among young children for it to manifest as a symptom of anxiety or any other kind of mental health problems. I'm not sure if it's something that develops later in life. I can't remember. I don't think I had difficulty deciding when I was younger. It's definitely something that I've experienced more growing up. Certainly, I don't find this offensive as well. I don't care about the term fickle. I don't think it's offensive at all. But it's just something to bear in mind. But I do. I really liked it. Definitely related to it. I thought Little Miss Fickle was a rather cute read.